wanted clause 4 and common ownership to be utilised for the common good. But really that wasn't a socialist system of society. And eventually, of course, in 1975, we saw what happened following Kinnock's attempts to completely transform the structure of the Labour Party towards the middle ground, carried on by John Smith, and then, of course, carried even further by Tony Blair. And it's ironic that in the speech he made to the conference in 75, nobody seemed to, 74 actually, nobody seemed to, 1994, nobody seemed to realise what he was doing. He was right at the end of his speech talking about going for new Labour, new policies. But built into that was not merely a proposal to abolish Clause 4 of the Constitution. It was to carry forward the collaborationist policy introduced by Ramsay MacDonald in 1926 to scrap proportional representation from the Labour Party's policy. In other words, it was a social democratic party becoming even more social democratic and maintaining the status quo. And we were able, as a result of the legal action taken by the NUM and the Bakers Union, in challenging the validity of the conference decision purportedly taken in 1975, to see exactly what they had in store. And we read it. And if you read the Constitution, and if people have read the Labour Party Constitution today, it not only has scrapped Clause 4, but it now has updated that considerably, and it means that nobody can simply put forward a resolution or a motion for conference. It's got to go through a vetting committee. So you can never change it. And when he was asked about this, Tony Benn said, the Labour Party has never been a socialist party. He said, the Labour Party has always been a broad church and social democratic with some socialists within it. I couldn't better that quote. I think he's dead right. And of course, when Blair made that famous speech, or infamous speech, scrapping Clause 4, Tony Benn was asked, would he, like Arthur Scargill, be resigning from the Labour Party and forming a socialist party? And he said, I was born into the Labour Party and I will die as a member of the Labour Party. And they asked me for my comment on television. I said, it's rather ironic to listen to Tony saying that, because I recall reading that his father, who was a Liberal MP, said, I was born into the Liberal Party and I will die as a member of the Liberal Party. That was just a few years before he joined the Labour Party. So there is a precedent to look back upon if Tony wants to historically write it into his diary.
Running out of time.
But it's important that we look at it. And now I turn finally towards the analysis of what's happening on the left. If this party has done something right, it's in its consistency towards other political organisations on the left. Those who consistently approach us and say, can't we get together and have one party? Can we not get together and have an electoral alliance? Can we not get together and have an electoral pact? These people, quite frankly, are guilty of really sabotage, in the sense that the right wing of the Labour Party are. Because they inevitably are bound to fail. They will create splits and divisions which have been demonstrated over the years, but never more so than in 2007 and 2008. Take, for example, the SWP. It suddenly stopped talking about being socialist, and started talking in terms of supporting a wider, broader Stop the War coalition. We'd no problem with the Stop the War coalition, totally in favour of it. Ironically, we were neatly excluded from its management central committee on the basis that we ought to be based in London. That was to get Dave Nellis and Militant Tendency or Militant Labour or the Socialist Party, whichever name it now uses, off the committee because they're based in the Midlands. So I put my hand up at that meeting and said, excuse me, but I live in London. And that created a right problem for them. And their answer was, but your party is based in Lancashire. So that was the answer. In other words, it was a manipulation. And of course, the manipulation has come home to roost, hasn't it? Just look what's happened. It's not just split into two. One that's going back towards the SWP, and one that's going towards a more, shall we say, religious outlook with no commitment to socialism at all. In fact, I would say both organisations lack respect. On the other side of the coin, the Great Scots Hope is an example of what can happen.
Right.
I remember speaking with the leaders of both what is now the Scottish Socialist Party and what is now Solidarity. And there's a name to conjure with. The leader in Poland was Lech Wałęsa. I make no comparisons, of course, between Lech Wałęsa and the leader of Solidarity in Scotland, because I do have respect for Tommy Sheridan in the past and on the basis of what he's done. But their policy in terms of how they formed together was bound to fail because there were two competing philosophies. And when they came to us and said, can we have a pact? Can we have an electoral arrangement? We said no, and we were right to. And if you look back, and I look back over the weekend, at the results in Scotland, over the period, not just at one, our party's done remarkably well. Bearing in mind, A, its limited membership, and B, its limited resources. The same can be said in Wales, with limited members, limited resources. If you look at what we've achieved, compared with what these other organisations have achieved, it makes a nonsense of what they're saying. People would think that this party had suddenly emerged as a new party saying we're taking over everybody. It didn't. And it's important that all our members understand, and indeed all their members understand, that the Socialist Labour Party emerged following months of negotiations with all these other parties, all these other socialist bodies, all these other trade union representatives, in meeting after meeting, and we created a constitution which nobody has ever been able to challenge and nobody says is wrong. And yet they won't join that party that could unite all of them. And you have to ask yourself the question why. And the answer is a simple one. They want to retain their autonomy to do what they want, and at the same time influence this party to determine how it goes forward, different from its own constitution.